Alright, so in my last video, I ended up saying that I am extending my hiatus from Lost Ark. I do not agree with their direction, I do not believe in their design choices, I just don't agree with how they're managing the game. My desire is fundamental change to the game, but I feel like I should talk about that a little bit more in a dedicated Lost Ark video. Because there are a lot of people say, well, these changes are good, the game is getting better, you should try it again, else save, yada yada yada. So I want to take this time to clarify my perspective. To start things off, yes, pretty much everything they've shown at Loan and our roadmap is good for the game and the community, which is pretty common. I don't think I'm alone in this feeling, but it always feels like this is good, but is it good enough? And usually it's not. For me, my issue lies in the core design of the game. After years of playing the game, I'm just no longer satisfied with the core gameplay loop. As humans, we often desire routine, which is what dailies provide. You have structure, stability, you know what you're going to be doing. A lot of people fear getting into new things because of the fear of failure. You gain a lot of confidence in what you do and it feels good. There is, however, a fine line between this and burnout. This is especially true when you're doing something that is supposed to be a fun pastime. Now, if you think about a job that keeps you financially stable, that you're doing the same thing every day in, day out. You know how to do your job, you know how to do it well, you have very low risk of anything bad going to happen. You've proven yourself and maybe you even feel confident that you're going to go forward in that career. That is very different from something that is supposed to be just a game to play on your free time. Because when there is no gain out of it, like no financial gain or anything outside of the game, the reward just might not be enough. When you do this stuff day in and day out, like a drug, you're going to slowly dull your senses. And then in terms of Lost Ark, the daily content that people don't really enjoy, but they do it because it's a means to the end, which is doing the raiding. Eventually, you're going to lead into a point of questioning why you're even doing this. At least that's how it was for me when my static fell apart and most of my main friends decided to quit. It turned out raiding with the boys was the reason why I was willing to put up with all the other things about the game that I disliked. And without that payoff, I kind of just broke free of these shackles. Sure, I could get a new static, I could join some friends, but it just wasn't the same. I didn't quit just immediately though. I started to play less, I started to do more things rested, I started to skip things. It wasn't until T4 hit that it was kind of the final nail in the coffin of, hey, this is just not going well. Because even back then, I wanted fundamental changes. I at least wanted a gear reset, but instead, Tier 4, to me, it looked like it was just going to amplify everything and make it worse. And unfortunately, I was right. Tier 4 has been... ooh. And as it turns out, my time away from the game, I actually don't really miss it. And don't get me wrong, I love the class design, I love the raids, they're fun, they're challenging, they're really enjoyable. But to me, everything else that is required to get there and maintain being there just isn't enough. There are just other games that I would actually enjoy booting up and playing as opposed to, hey, I gotta get these chores out of my way. Now, for the good portion of Lost Ark, I was actually a work from home employee and I had a lot of downtime, which meant I actually had a decent amount of time during my work hours to actually get a lot of my dailies done, as opposed to it being something that occupied my free time. It helped fill the gaps of my work while not impeding on it. Like even if I had something to do while I got into a chaos dungeon, I could just stop moving at that next floor and not start the timer, and then I could just work on that for like the next hour or two and then go back to my dailies. It was just very convenient, and I think a lot of people did this too, because Lost Ark really did pop off while a lot of people were work from home because of COVID. And so the job and chore-like aspects of the game actually just got paired well with my actual job, which means later on the night after work, the fun parts of the game I could actually just enjoy on my free time, which is raiding. However, a lot of work from home and remote work kind of died, and then I ended up having to go back in. And that really changed how I interact my relationship with the daily content of the game. And eventually it got to the point where I can't bring myself to open a game where my next step is to, while it takes the eternity to load, boot up YouTube or a streaming service so I could watch that while doing this stuff mindlessly. For me, if I'm booting up a game, it should be because I actually want to play the game. And I'm going to be honest, ever since quitting Lost Ark, that has been my experience with gaming. While you can argue like a competitive game is very repetitive, the joy of it comes from fighting skilled opponents and overcoming it, and also because you're fighting other players, no match is ever going to be the same twice. But the repetitive tasks in Lost Ark and most modern MMOs aren't designed to do anything but keep you logged in for longer, with just a lot of very low effort tasks that are just there to take up time. The thing is, even when you take away one chaos and one guardian raid to do every day, it doesn't make the content itself any more fun or better. All that does is make it a little bit more tolerable to do. And that's really the goal of a lot of these games, is to find that point where you are suffering but just not enough to quit. I know it sucks to hear, but they are going to try to min-max milking people. So the game has to be tedious by design to incentivize you to swipe. Back on topic though, when they reduce the amount of stuff you do daily, you're programmed already to play the game for X amount of hours a day, for example. And when people are programmed like that, when they can do the stuff on 2 characters in the time they would usually do 1, then they suddenly feel justified to do it on more characters. To a point, this kind of makes us our own worst enemy because it is the pressure we put on ourselves to really min-max. But that is allowed to exist because the game design wants it to be that way. If it didn't work, it just wouldn't exist. So my desire for fundamental change is about changing how you interact with the game on a daily basis. I want to be excited to boot up the game, to play the game just for fun. I want everyone to feel this way and not just the streamers. But I think it's really important to clarify because the full-time streamer has a very different mentality of the game than somebody else. Like how I was work from home, this is something I could do during my job between cases and waiting for builds and uploads. For a streamer, the game is the job. There's a lot of security with the stream of having an abundance of brain rot content that you can just talk to your chat during. Unless they're doing the new raid, it's basically ASMR with extra steps. So as somebody who is able to originally do a lot of the tedious stuff on the game on the job, then transitioning to somebody who was only able to play on their free time, I like to think I have a pretty good understanding on both sides and why really the streamer is the person who's saying this game needs more content and needs more to do, while others are saying the game has too much to do, is too time consuming. And so if they do choose to keep on playing the game, they have a very unhealthy and bad relationship with the game. And while it is highly unlikely, my hope for Lost Ark is that they do really change up the game, the core gameplay loop. And this is where some of you may say, well, they are getting rid of Unas and they are adding Paradise. While annoying, Unas were like the least offensive of your daily activities. If loading didn't exist, you'd be able to do your whole roster 6 in like 3 minutes. When they talked about removing it, they were talking about how they wanted to better balance your daily life in the game. And then they add Paradise. Now the thing about Paradise is we don't know how frequent we do this content. It could be daily, it could be weekly. But looking at this content, Elysian basically just sounds like, oh well, Chaos 2 now. First of all, a one-on-one boss fight, not quite gonna be like Guardian Raids 2, but it's still gonna be kind of similar, except for something you had to do solo. Then hell, they kind of already compare it to Chaos Dungeon, so that's not really a good start. However, it does sound the most interesting of the 3 because they talk about having random effects. That could be really fun if they really just go out of their way with making your class feel very unique, very broken in this mode. The issue is that when they mention Chaos Dungeon, they're saying it should be also the difficulty of Chaos Dungeon. If you make your character wacky, fun, super overpowered, and broken, it doesn't really have the same impact if you're fighting something that is just really weak. Something you could have beat without it. Like if you had a perk that gave you lifesteal. Fighting a boss that you just steamroll no matter what and not experience that lifesteal doesn't matter. But if you're fighting a really hard boss and that lifesteal was the reason why you won, then it feels a lot better. Paradise is just a very wait and see scenario since we don't really know what it's actually going to be like. However, the point I wanted to get to is we started off with 2 Chaos, 2 Guardians, 3 Unas. We didn't like that. And eventually we got it to 1 Chaos, 1 Guardian, 3 Unas. We considered that a win, we were pretty happy with it. Now we're 1 Chaos, 1 Guardian, and 0 Unas. But again, depending on the frequency, then now we have Chaos 2, Chaos 3, and Guardian Raid kind of 2.5. The non-monster edition maybe. And so when you think about it that way, it almost feels like we've just gone back full circle. Now at this point, or even at earlier points, there's probably a lot of people who are like, well, Juckwall, you just don't like grindy games. And to that, I would say wrong. To me, the base version of Phantasy Star Online 2 was the absolute peak of the infinite grinding simulator. And this is because how much freedom you had with your grind. Your progression really wasn't linear. Yes, you had to go up in gear and get higher level gear, but there was usually multiple different paths within that tier. While yes, you had like multiple 11-star weapons, you could choose which one you wanted to go for. While yes, the game did have best in slot options like any other game is going to, most content it just didn't matter. If I wanted to grind a different thing of value every day, I would probably not see the same content in the same month. There was just so many different maps, game modes, difficulties on that game that just made it so possible that you could just do that. That absolute freedom, along with the game just having a varied difficulty depending on what you want to do, you have your options, just made the game so enjoyable. Just grind because there's so many ways to reach the top that it didn't matter which direction you took to take it. What I think is really important about the PSO2 versus the lower grind, and that is that the PSO2 grind is filled with endpoints, but also starting points. You farm the content till you get the drop, and then you move on to the next grind. So a big thing in that game was augments, for example. You farm one augment enough, and then you move on to the next one. Or you farm a weapon, and then you move on to the next item. You are allowed to move on to the content. Yes, you might have to go back later, because either you got to farm more augments, or they added another difficulty which has a different drop pool. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark, it's a grind that never stops and it's all the same thing. I think a good analogy is actually racing. You clear a race, you're able to go to a completely new track and have a completely different experience. In a game like Lost Ark, you're just taking laps in a circular track. And to me, that's what makes a big difference in a grind. And so that's really where I'm at right now. I know it's going to take Lost Ark a very big hit for them to actually change anything fundamentally. And the strange thing about Smilegate and Lost Ark is they have done this before. The chances they do it again, extremely low. I'm not going to lie. I don't really expect it to happen, but I am planning to still keep an eye on the game, maybe try updates that interest me to some degree. Like, I definitely will log on and give the Paradise mode and all that a shot. I might try Female Paladin, but the chances are that if I ever come back and do play it, there's going to be a better event by then anyways, so it kind of also is a waste to do it now if I don't actually plan to dedicate to the game. So it is just kind of a wait and see scenario. So I hope that kind of helps, clears up, and gives my perspective on where things are at right now, along with my overall thought process. Just remember, gaming should be fun. And if it's not fun, find a way to make it fun or find something else. I have been procrastinating editing this video for over a week now. And then we got the July update and everybody's kind of soy jacking over it. And I want to say they are right. Like, these changes are good. Like, the server merge, absolutely huge. And they are making strides to making the game better for the people who are still playing. And even a little better for people trying to get into the game. So I just wanted to end the video saying this is good stuff, but it's still not enough for me to come back. Right now, I'm just having a lot more fun playing other games. Like I said, I am still going to keep it on the game because I wanted to do better. I wanted to be better. But that will be it for the video. This is a very long yap, so bye.